Hi, Goddesses. Welcome to this episode of Goddess Talk. I am so excited to have the amazing and extraordinary Nicole Allshouse on today. Hi, Nicole. How are you?
Good morning to you, Ashley. How is everybody doing today?
Oh, we're doing so good after we got a few technical difficulties behind our belt, right?
We figured it out.
It's a whole new Zoom world. Well, thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to introduce you to the audience because I feel so honored and privileged that I get to interview the interviewer. So most of you probably know Nicole from her amazing work on ABC 3340 as the host and anchor of Talk of Alabama. So today I get to ask the questions. I'm super excited.
I'm ready.
I figured you were the expert of them all. Well, if this is your first time tuning into Goddess Talk, this is a platform to inspire and empower women to claim your power, recognize your highest potential, and live your best goddess life. So we have an extraordinary example today. I don't think there's anything she doesn't do, actually. So I'm going to introduce you and let you know some things you probably don't know about her. So for one, Nicole is an Emmy award-winning journalist. She is the AP Best Reporter Award winner. A previous CNN intern, she has traveled the country working for NBC, Fox, and ABC. She ultimately, of course, has landed now in Alabama as the host and anchor of Talk of Alabama. She is a wife and working mom of 3, so AKA Superwoman or Super Goddess for today. She also has a lifestyle blog, a Facebook community called Scar Nation, and is currently working on her children's book. So I can't wait to hear about all of these things she's working on. And most importantly, what I love most about her is that her intention or her just main focus behind all of this is the platform to choose happiness. And how important and prevalent is that in today's world with everything that's going on? The world is just encompassed in so much fear and needs all the help in having a positive mindset right now. So I am so excited to talk to Nicole about choosing happiness and how she's done that in her own life and has accomplished all the amazing things that she has done. So welcome again. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, I am honored. So thank you for having me.
Well, with that being said, I want to dive into your story. I know at 4 years old, you were hit by a drunk driver. So I'm sure that had some significant impact on your life and how you got to where you are now. So I would love, just tell us your story and your journey and how you got to where you are now.
Okay, so at 4 years old, you're right. I was sleeping in my toddler bed, and as crazy as it sounds, a drunk driver drove through our house. He lost control and rounded a corner and ended up in my bedroom, hit me head on and sent me airborne across the room and through the closet. And I'll make a long story rather short, shattered kneecap, shattered growth plate, broken legs, internal damage, all kinds of mayhem. And this was back in 1981. You know, DUI laws were very, very lenient. It was a different system than is now. Drunk driver, nothing happened to him. He walked completely free, didn't pay my family or myself one penny. And in turn, I spent the next about 15 years in and out of Cleveland Rainbow and Babies Children in Cleveland, Ohio, which is a pediatric hospital. And it's interesting because it's really a medical anomaly. And I always say that it's a God wink because there's no way that I should be walking now. There's no way that I should have been able to have children because of the trauma. It was so extensive. And several doctors wanted to amputate actually. And there was one doctor who was a Navy trained doctor from Vietnam. And he had worked with soldiers in Vietnam who had extensive bone damage, obviously from being in the war. And he said, I can save her legs, especially her left leg. That was the one that was most traumatically affected. And the other doctors said, no, we really need to amputate. And he fought hard and they let him, they rolled the dice on him and his skill and it worked. And so he kind of took my own shattered bone, and as yucky as that sounds, he molded me back basically a new knee joint from my own shattered bone. And it's bonded all these years. I mean, I'm 43 and that was when I was 4 years old. And so that was just a complete God blessing. And then doctor said I would never have children because of all the, the internal issues I had from getting hit. The car was going about 90 miles an hour and I was 29 or 30 pounds, somewhere in that area. And my husband and I went on to have 3 children who are now 4, 8, and 10. And so I always say it goes back to God. And it's interesting because the number one question, Ashley, that people ask me is, geez, you spent your life in a hospital, you've got a million scars, when it's raining out, you limp, or, you'll have to have more surgeries down the road. Don't you wish that wouldn't have happened? And I always say, no, I don't wish that. I feel like God allows you to be destroyed to rebuild you in his vision, is what I always tell my friends. I don't think God allows bad things to happen without intent. And I think the intent always with him is to rebuild you, to use you as a vessel for his message. And so I've spent really a big chunk of my life talking about, doctors are fantastic, and the medical community is, as you're seeing now, is more talented than and more hero elements than anybody out there. But at the end of the day, only God can really come down and put his hand on things and pull you out of them. And that's exactly what happened, because medically I shouldn't be able to have kids, right? But I have 3. So how would you explain that? It's one of those things. So I try to talk to young kids about drinking and driving and choices, and my own kids, and I go and talk to high schools and high school students about that. And even grown women about the power of a mindset. And I think that's a long-winded version or answer. But really, you have to mentally train your mind like you would your body. And it's the same tactics, and also some different ones in there. And we can talk more about that, but that's kind of the summary of what happened.
Well, I thank you so much for sharing that, because I realized, the broad story. So I assumed that it was a car accident. I didn't realize it was your home that was struck by the drunk driver and just all of that. And so you have overcome so much, and you are shining so bright. And you said something that I wrote down. You said, my leg was shattered, but it was molded new. And I think you addressed that too. But especially just bringing it relevant to today, I feel like so many people might feel like their life is kind of shattered right now, or maybe they lost their job, or income is lower, or whatever the reason might be. Sometimes things shatter to be made new. So I think your story is a great story of hope right now for so many people that are listening. So thank you.
Of course, I hope so.
Well, and talking about quarantine as well, I think this is something that, of course, is affecting everyone. How has that affected you? And talking about a positive mindset, to be a little bit more specific, it's so important right now, because I think depression and mental health is a big hot topic right now, and how people are dealing with it. I think I did some research, and it said emotional distress hotlines are actually at 1,000%. So how are you choosing to be happy now, or what is your mindset through this and that's getting you through the day?
Yeah, I think it starts with, especially for me, particularly my grandfather growing up, he always called me a soldier. And, he just would always say to me, if you want to stay in this pool of pity, you'll drown here. So you have a choice. You can admit that this stinks and it's miserable and it's no fun and it's painful, and you can move on. So you can accept your reality and move on from there, or you can live in a state of anger and sadness. And so it's really became, with me at least, you have 2 choices. And so I said, basically asked him as a child, well, what happens if I choose, staying in this pool of pity? And he said, you'll drown there and you'll stay there. Like, you won't succeed. You won't go on. You won't be able to mentally, physically, spiritually grow as a human. The second choice is, just saying it's not great, but I'm going to push forward. You'll be able to accomplish great things in your life. And so I think it's really important as grown women and as parents that we, even if it's not our exact children, but anybody's children, that we push them, because children don't know. For example, children don't know hate unless we teach them hate. Children don't know, failure until they experience it. So once you've experienced something that's tough, you've got to have somebody on the other end to be able to encourage you. And it's positive affirmation. And, I remember, it was rough as a kid because kids would make fun. And remember being upset and my grandfather saying, not everybody is going to love you. And that's okay too. Like you have to love yourself, and you have to understand that Jesus loves you and God loves you, and everybody else is okay if they don't. And so that was really my foundation. And I've been able to hold on to that, right now, even as a hard news reporter for 10 years, I had a lot of strong critics, and that's okay. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. It's just a matter of whether you choose to kind of take mouthfuls of that and ingest it and let that become you, or if you reject it and say, I know my heart, I know my intentions, I'm going to choose joy. I mean, it really is a choice. It's really a matter of waking up each morning and saying, today I'm going to choose joy, because I could choose to be sad, or I could choose to be angry, but I'm not going to, because at the end of the day, what does it accomplish? It accomplishes absolutely nothing. And then as becoming a parent, I am more conscious of doing that, just for the example that I set for my kids. I want them to fail. I want them to feel pain. Pain gives growth. It's like the old saying about some people feel like when you're at the bottom of the barrel, when you're down in the dumps, or when you're kind of, I'll give you the analogy of a plant, when you plant something, some people could say, well, it's buried, and people could say it's planted for growth. It's really how you look at it, and so perspective, key, perspective is key.
I take notes, and I have so many tidbits of wisdom that you said that I want to point out all of them. One, you were talking about acceptance, through creation through chaos comes creation, is a theme that keeps coming up through this podcast. And I think what you said is that you have to accept where you're at, so you can create from it. There's a saying, don't focus on what you don't want, focus on what you do, because your thoughts become your reality. So you have a choice. You can focus on all the things you don't want, and you're going to kind of stay in that manifestation of that, or you can focus on all the opportunities that can come with it. And I think that is a huge point of choosing happiness. And I always, I do empowerment coaching for women, and I say it's like a TV channel. What do you want to watch? You're in control of the clicker. Like, which channel are you going to watch? It is your choice. And so there. And then what else did you say? You talked about perspective and failure and all of these things I want to dive into more. I think they'll come out with the other questions, but absolutely. And I just love everything that you've said. So I guess and then quarantine specifically for you, are you working, has it like kind of catapulted you to try something new that you weren't really expecting?
I'm still working every day. We are doing the work from home at ABC. And what that entails is that's what I was doing all morning today was we weren't studio shooting traditional in the actual ABC building. We were on location in an open park. And that's what we've had to kind of pivot to, which is outside, 6 feet apart. And we're doing it that way. And so we're still doing our interviews for my lifestyle program. And that's been fine. I will say homeschooling was hard. I'm thankful that is done with, because I did not go to college to be a teacher. I'm probably not a great teacher. In fact, I would probably argue that I'm a miserable teacher, because it's not necessarily my wheelhouse. I can, my kids were asking me questions about advanced math and things that I probably should remember from those days. You make yourself, I'm going to find one thing I enjoy about homeschooling. And every day I would find one thing I liked about it, and I would focus only on that, laser-like focus. And over time, guess what? You're conditioning your mind to then wake up and choose gratitude, and be like, I'm thankful that I have my kids here. I'm thankful that I can see this lesson take part. And so it's a shift in the mindset. But again, it doesn't happen. You have to take the steps, to do that.
Well, I think you said it beautifully. And what I want to point out is what I think happens to so many, especially working moms. We are trying to wear all of these hats, right? And then things happen, and we don't take a second to take a breath and tune in to what you're feeling and say, okay, I am anxious. What do I need to do about it? Let me take a time out. Like, give ourselves permission to take a time out sometimes and tune into how we're feeling, because it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. We've got to give ourselves permission to do that. And you said something funny. You're like, I'm not a teacher. And yes, you may be teaching academics and, all the grades you're not a teacher of that, but you are a teacher of happiness. And so own that, sister, or own that, goddess, for sure.
I think the bigger lesson in all of that you could apply to everyday life is that you just never know what you're going to wake up and face. None of us know. And so I think it's really important to have that, whatever your faith is, whatever you believe in, to hold on to that, because it's the one steadfast thing that you can hold on to, because life is ever evolving. And, if you get on social media and you buy into these people that feel, that make you feel like life is perfect, you're going to be sorely disappointed, because that's just a lie. Nobody's life is perfect. I mean, people see me and they think, oh, you've got your own TV show and you're married and 3 kids and your life is just perfect. And I'm like, but you don't know what happened the first 20 years of my life, essentially, when I was in a hospital and growing up, in a pediatric unit of an orthopedic, ward. So I'm really, as a journalist, I'm already trained not to judge. We just don't judge as journalists. I don't myself. And I think a lot of that probably happened from growing up in that way. When you are kind of the underdog, in a lot of ways, you grow up to be a more empathetic adult, but also an adult who kind of just steps back and realizes that you might see something and you're judging it only from your perspective, or only from your position in life, or only from your front porch, but you have no idea what happened on the front end of somebody's life. You don't know abuse or trauma or an accident or food deprivation. You just don't know what somebody went through on the front end. So I feel like now more than ever with social media, it's important for us women to realize that if somebody tells you or makes you think that they have this idyllic life, it just doesn't exist. Nobody has it. But that's a blessing too, because boring and perfect is boring. It's like the challenges are what make, if you look back on history, some of the best ideas, some of the best companies were formed, some of the best inventions, some of the best friendships were formed during the hard times. That's when people realize what they've got. That's where grit lives. And I think that's, important to note.
Yes, I love doing these interviews because, yes, as I'm promoting them, and all of you have these wonderful flashy titles that go under your name, and that's fantastic. But what is so important is that you're willing to tell the story people don't know, and the journey that got you there. And it was choices, and it was resilience, and it was positive mindset. And so thank you again for just sharing your story. What can we do? I know you have a lot of projects going on between your blog and your Facebook community. How can we best support you right now?
Oh, you know what? I'm writing my first children's book, so we'll see. Hopefully that will come out this year, and it's called The Scar Club, and I have not finished it yet, but I'm hoping to finish it in 2020. So I would if you could just keep an eye open for that. And it's for, middle grade to young adults. It's for young guys and gals who are the fighters and survivors of the world. The people that get the hard knock and they keep standing up and they keep going. And I hope that the message that they get is that it doesn't matter what card you're dealt. It just matters how you play your hand. That's this cliche saying, but it's really true. You have to just evaluate. Life is like this. It's such a brief, fleeting thing. And so what am I going to do with the hours that God blesses me with on this planet? And if you're not finding purpose, then you should do something else. I've always said to my girlfriends, if you look in the mirror every day and you don't get true joy out of whatever your career, your profession, your hobby is, you better change hobbies. You better change jobs, because it will be gone before we know it. And so I guess to answer your question, hopefully when the book comes out, people that are avid readers and enjoy reading would like to get the book for their kids and their grandkids and nieces and nephews. And I'm also, Instagram's a really great platform. I try to do some uplifting messages on my Instagram, which is just Nicole Allshouse TV. So that way as well.
Well, and the Facebook group, is that still going, Scarnation?
Yeah, and I'm doing Scarnation as well. I'm not doing that as much, only in this tiny little season. And that's because I'm trying to get this book to a publisher on a deadline. And if you guys have ever done that, it's my first time, but it is no joke. I mean, it's a pretty tight deadline. And so I'm like, as soon as I get that done, which hopefully will be next month, then I'll be able to get back and do that. And that's just promoting stories. It's just a platform where I can show women that have had either emotional, physical, mental, spiritual scars, so to speak, and how they are
which is all of us, right? We all have a story that falls under one of those umbrellas, for sure.
Yes, you know. So yeah, and I think, I mean, it's one of those things where I think if you look for joy, you will find it. Mm-hmm. You just have to look. It's all around us. God's blessings are everywhere. You just have to recognize them.
Well, I'm a big believer in the law of attraction. I think I always talk about it, but simply stated, it's like attracts like. So if you're looking for happiness and you attune to that, it's universal law that it has to come to you. It's just whatever you search for is what you will end up seeking, or what will find you. So with that being said too, I want to dive a little bit deeper into, I know some things that we already talked about, like failure and perspective and all of these things. I teach a course called The Goddess Mindset. So that simply stated, it's just an empowerment program ultimately to teach women how to identify the fears in their life, or the self-limiting beliefs, the story that they've kind of attached to, and how to choose love instead. Love for themselves, love for their purpose, love for their passion. Like you said, joy. You got to connect to that. You got to live life through your joy, or you're missing out, because life is short. So part of that teaching talks about self-limiting beliefs. So I know you've had these obstacles. What would you say, how did you identify what a self-limiting belief was for you, and ultimately how did you overcome that?
You know, I think it's interesting because titles, I think we as women all put titles on ourselves, and unfortunately they happen at a very young age. You know, for me, when I was younger and in a wheelchair on and off and on crutches, you know, I was given the title, oh, she's disabled, or she's handicapped. And you end up, even once I was out of the wheelchairs and the crutches were in the garbage, that still played in the back of my mind, you know, because it was a title that was put on me. So it's not just that we put titles on ourselves as women, people put titles on us. And we have to then understand, okay, number one, this is the title, and how do I let that go? I have a good girlfriend, and she's now a correspondent for CBS News, national news, and she was a high school dropout. And so for years she carried that around, and you know, she was ashamed of it, and now she has embraced that and then used it to help other girls who are feeling unmotivated and are feeling like the system is failing and they don't want any part of it. And so for me, same thing, you know, whatever your title is, I remember like even being little and being so, people would say, oh, she's so scrawny, because, you know, when I was having surgeries all the time and I was smaller framed anyway. And I remember in college thinking like, oh, I look so scrawny. And one day it just hit me. I was like, why am I calling myself that? You know, if other people want to think that, and you have to stop using those words, because you speak them into the universe, and you know as well as I do, then you believe them. It's kind of like you're going to speak what you believe. And so I had to just consciously, again, stop myself or correct myself. Even if that means verbal affirmation to yourself. You know, if you say, oh, I'm so scrawny, or I'm so this, or I'm disabled, or I'm this, you have to say, you know what? I'm not that way. I am differently abled, or I am whatever the title is, you know, but again, that's conscious behavior that you have to be aware. And so I think the key is to write down for women the titles that you carry with you. And when you see them on paper, you can remind yourself more easily, like stick it in your purse, put it on your mirror, do whatever. But when you write those titles down, that baggage you carry, it's more easy to become aware and to be conscious of those thoughts. And then you have to decide to let them go. You know, you have to decide, only you get to decide who you are. Only you get to decide and choose kind of the life that you want to live based on your goals, your dreams, your aspirations. Nobody is going to, your mom and dad and your support system may be great, but at the end of the day, it's just you. You know, it's like you come into this world alone and you're going to leave it alone. So you've got this little window, and my advice always is, it's like, you know, like the dash, right? The dash in your headstone, on your headstone when you die, there's that dash. So you've got the time you were born, the time you die. And I'm sure there's some famous quote about this, but what do you do with that dash? You know, what's meaningful for that? And so I think it's important we have the candid conversations too. You know, I think social media is making it harder for women in a lot of ways.
I think you said something about labels, and how do we as women give ourselves that time and space to realize sometimes we get caught up in such a busy life we don't even know or are aware of the labels that we are living as our truth that are a lie. So one, how do you really identify with what your truth is? And there's a quote, you know, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. So what are you telling yourself? And you're right, write it down. And then I'm a big believer in affirmations, and then write the opposite of that. And sometimes that can be uncomfortable as we rewrite our truth. But Dale Smith Thomas, who I know you've interviewed before, and she was also on Goddess Talk, she says, anyone's opinion of you is none of your business. And it's true, we can't attach to what other labels other people put on us. And actually tell this story about the bumblebee. Do you know about the bumblebee?
No.
Well, the bumblebee is aerodynamically, scientifically is not able to fly. But of course, what does the bumblebee do every day? It flies, and then so you might just see it as this insect, but in reality, it is, you know, going against all odds, fulfilling its purpose of pollinating the entire world with flowers. And so I always tell that story when I'm working with girls, because you can't attach to what other people say about you. It's not your truth. And I have actually, the next question is about standing in your personal truth. And you have gone into so much detail, but when did you feel like you really had that moment when you were like, I'm going to tell this story and I want to put it out there powerfully? And what did that look like for you?
You know, I was 40, and I remember it distinctly because, you know, for years, I never owned shorts. I just didn't own them. I would wear sundresses or pants, you know, that always hit the knee, that always went kind of below the knee, you know, because I've got so many scars all over my thighs and my femurs and my knees, and my left kneecap's bigger than my right kneecap. And I always, and I'll tell you why. What happened was, as a child, one day I was getting ready for school, and my father came out, and I was first day, and I was so proud of my outfit, and he said, are you gonna wear that? And I said, well, yeah. And I felt great about myself. And he said, no, I think you should go in and change that. I think you should wear pants to school. Now, what happened is this. My father had the best of intentions, but as a child, I didn't understand that. What he was trying to do, he knew kids were probably going to make fun. And he was trying to protect me from ridicule at school. But what I heard was, you should hide these scars. You should be ashamed of these scars, even though I did nothing to deserve them. I was a 4-year-old sleeping in my bed. And so I felt ashamed for a lot of years. You know, I felt less than, I felt inadequate. You know, bathing suit season, I've been in the South for 20 years. I mean, bathing suit season was never enjoyable for me. Like the thought of getting out and every time never fails. I go to the beach and somebody wants to come up and be like, wow. It's normally a doctor who wants it. You have so many scars and those are amazing. Like, I'm like, you must be a surgeon because you're going to appreciate all these scars. And 9 out of 10 times they are a doctor. With that said, all those years, I didn't even know I felt ashamed. That's what's crazy about it. You can live feeling ashamed and embarrassed, even if it's not your fault, and not even know you feel that way.
Yeah.
And something happened, you know, I think I hit, I know for a fact that when I hit 40, I just like, this is too much work. I mean, I'm trying to like, so I would stand certain ways because my alignment even is off in my left leg, where instead of it being perfectly in line, it's like this. And so it looks weird. My profile looks odd. And so I remember even getting married, I would say to my husband, when we first got married, I want this sink. And he said, why do you want that sink? And I told him, I said, oh, the light's better here. That was absolutely true. The light was better at that sink, but guess why else? If I was standing in like a bra and underwear or in a bathing suit, he would be looking at me from the side with all the scars that went down from, basically hip to toe. And I didn't want him to see that side. And so do you see how that carries with you? And here I am, people, again, they think, oh, she's a successful news anchor, and I was at that time working for Fox News in Atlanta with 5 or 6 million people watching me every night. And people on the outside think, wow, that's amazing. And then here I am, not even wanting to stand in a mirror where my new husband at the time could see that side of my leg. So it was one of those things. I had had 3 children. I had just given birth to my third. She was 39 and a half when I had her. And I was like, I'm done. This is too much work. It's too much work not being authentic. That's what amazes me. I tell young girls all the time, be authentic. It's so much easier. Your life will be easier when you don't try to hide you. And I was trying to hide my scars because I felt like they were ugly or they weren't pretty enough. And then I realized it doesn't matter. It really, truly doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, we're all going to get wrinkly and old and saggy. And it's that way. And so I think that's when I just said, forget it. And I went out that day and I bought like 6 pairs of shorts. And I mean like shorts. I was like, if I'm going to show these scars, I'm going to show them. And I, was like, forget it. If people don't want to look, they can have we're born of free will. They can choose to turn away. And I guess the end of and most important part of that story, Ashley, is the freedom that comes from that is liberating beyond belief. Because you're no longer spending your energy hiding and covering and being ashamed. You are now spending that precious time embracing all the goodness around you. And that's the truest sense of freedom, when you can really look in the mirror and say, I understand this is not what society deems beautiful, but these are my scars, whatever kind of scars you have, mental, physical, emotional, whatever. I'm going to view them as trophies for what I overcame. And I'm going to celebrate them and leave it at that. And it's all in your mind.
I'm just, raising the arms. Amen. But you're right. Your scars are your trophies. And Oprah says, what I know for sure is speaking your truth is the most powerful tool we have.
Yes.
And
your voice is your currency.
Yes, it is. It is your trophy. And I love how you stated that. I also think, I always think it's so fascinating, these stories that women tell. And here you are in media where you are seen every single day. That is, the highlight of your career. And here you are with this shame of a physical, whatever you want to call it. Like, it's a gift, it's your trophy, but that's really, really powerful. And I know for me, I find it comical because I've been made fun of. I have, a little bit of a high-pitched, unique voice. And I remember being teased as a kid, I would have to go on. I remember in assembly at school, I'd have to go and make announcements. They would like rotate each student to do it. And I would be made fun of, the whole week for my voice. And so I always joke that now I'm a speaker and I have these audiences and I tell that story. So I always think it's unique, but that's right. That's how we are used, through telling these stories and being authentic and not being ashamed of our gifts. So that is so wonderful. And I love having you on today. I have one other thing I want to talk to you, and that's about getting outside your comfort zone, because I feel like that's something that stops a lot of women. We're so comfortable being safe and putting ourselves out there. You mentioned for just being, criticism or people judging you and having their opinions of you and not letting that affect your truth as well. Yes. Maybe dive into that a little bit as well. Do you have a story around that where you felt like you were really putting yourself out there on a limb, and whether it's through traveling or through a new career or whatever that might have looked like for you?
Yeah, writing the children's book's a great example. I've been a writer for 22 years, that I've been in television. And I think I'm a good writer. I hope that I am. And writing a children's book, I found myself frozen, almost paralyzed at some points, because I would let fear kind of get in my mind as, what if it's not good enough? What if nobody likes this book? What if it stinks? What if my vision and my dream does not translate to the masses? And so very much I felt that way, very much I felt like I'm kind of putting all this on the line because it's about a little girl, loosely based on my own story about growing up in a hospital. And I finally said, okay, here's the thing. I may not succeed at this, but if I don't try it, then I'm always going to wonder, could I have written that book? Should I have written that book? And that was my turning point. I said, I just don't want to be in my 70s and 80s and look back and say, I really wish I would have done that. And so anytime that I feel, paralyzed with fear, I just ask myself, what's the alternative? And if the alternative is me being a senior citizen and wondering, that's what I think would be a horrible injustice, because you're never going to succeed at everything you try in life. It's just the nature of life. Yeah. But if you just don't try it, then you would never know if you're going to succeed or fail anyway. And so I think that is, it's a simple story, but I think that was the most important thing, is it reminded me in writing that children's book that this may not go as well as I hope it does, but if one person can read it and feel like their life matters, then okay, then maybe that's all God intended it for. Maybe it wasn't intended to be a New York Times bestseller, and maybe it is, but you don't know until you do it,
Right, there's a quote, and I think it says, your purpose is to put your great gift into the world. So when you have that inkling in your heart, whatever that is, with that intention of great love, the universe is just waiting for you to put it out there. So who are you to stop it? And I referenced Dale Smith Thomas earlier, but she's just a great mentor to me. And she also said, when I've done, new things in my life, she said, Ashley, don't be afraid. All you can do is try. And I love that, because we get so scared. What if I fail? What if I fail? Well, the reality is, all you can do is try. You're doing something, and you're going to end up the same or better. So what's the fear?
I think we as women, we have to listen to our gut more. Yeah. I think we are easily swayed, even strong, confident women, by the opinions of our mothers, our mother-in-laws, our sisters, our friends, our neighbors. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I always tell my kids, people will lie to you, but your gut never will. Mm-hmm. And I think that is so important for even grown women to remember that if it's something that's on your mind and in your heart, and God keeps putting it there, whatever your dream is, whatever you want to do, then he's doing that for a reason. He doesn't just place things on your mind and your heart for you to sit idle on them. He expects you to take movement. Excuse me. And I think the worst feeling would be, I tell my kids too, I want you to show up at the gates exhausted. Like, God gives you infinite talent, right? So when you get to the gates and he says to you, what did you do with all that talent I gave you? And you say, nothing. That's going to be really disappointing to him. So if you're gifted, which every human in the world is gifted infinite talent, and you don't use it, then that's just that's a travesty. You need to show up at the gates exhausted, like you laid it all on the line and did everything in your power to use the gifts that he gave you.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And, part of this platform is claiming your power as a woman. We have to stop giving our power away to other people's judgments or opinions or fear or anything. Like, you have to stand in that power. It is your gift. So you led into that beautifully. But I want to now do a fun quiz. So it's just going to be like 10, it's like a speed round, 10 questions, and then just answer with the first answer that comes to mind. So are you ready?
Ready. I'm ready.
Okay. What is your zodiac sign?
Taurus.
What has been your favorite job?
My current job.
Good answer, right? Your least favorite job?
when I was a weather girl in Missouri.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Favorite book?
Oh, The Notebook.
Oh, that's a good one. Favorite quote or slogan? Oh, there's a little eye speaking behind you.
Oh my.
Hi.
Hi, baby.
Nicole's beautiful daughter is joining the Zoom today.
Favorite quote or slogan? One I always say at home is "Don't give up, dream up," and I say that all the time to my kids.
I love that. Don't give up, dream up. Yes. What is something you can't live without? A guilty pleasure, so to speak.
Chocolate ice cream.
Yeah, right? Celebrity crush.
Oh. It used to be Brad Pitt like a million years ago. Excuse me, I have a tickle in my throat.
I'm making you nervous.
No, probably George Clooney. He's still handsome.
Oh, yeah, you can't go wrong with George Clooney. And then most used emoji.
Smiley face.
That's a good one too. Okay, and then this is just your last advice for any woman listening that you would want them to take away from you.
Always bring water into a podcast. I'm like, let's see, my best advice. I think probably the most simple advice is and I think my best advice is to pray. I mean, really, as simple as that sounds, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty in your life. There's going to be a lot of, no matter what stage of life you are, whether you're a teenager, mature woman, senior citizen, you're going to encounter all kinds of things. You're going to encounter trauma and pain and suffering and loss and mourning and grief and every emotion out there. And I think when I get, in those phases or those seasons of life, because you're going to have seasons of pure joy and utter disappointment, prayer is still the same thing that grounds me. Prayer is the one thing that I can hold on to on my best day and my worst day. And so whoever you pray to or whoever you hold on to, do that. And then, I always say, like, my husband is kind of my soft place to fall, meaning find somebody. It could be a mentor. It could be a friend. It could be a neighbor. It could be your spouse. But find that person. Nobody can give you happiness, right? Or make you happy because it comes from within. But find somebody who is your soft place to fall, that no matter what news comes your way, good or bad, somebody can be that buffer for you. Because I think at the end of the day, humans were never designed, to go through this life without having somebody in their corner. It's good. It doesn't matter who's in your corner, but make sure you got somebody there, and then be that for somebody else. You better fight hard for somebody else, because get in somebody else's storm, is what I tell my family. It's not just, even in those seasons where your life is being good, there's people all around you, that their life is that season. Maybe they're dealing with depression. Maybe they've lost a loved one. You don't know, open your eyes, ask questions, be curious, be aware, and get in somebody else's storm. Don't just stay in your perfect little lane, because again, perfect, it's boring. Who wants perfect?
Well, and just everything you're saying, there's so many people who are listening that identify with something you said today, and you have been a lighthouse for them. So thank you for falling into just the platform of this show and inspiring and empowering others to connect with you through your story. And I just know that everyone listening today has had to have taken something away that has helped them claim their power and recognize their highest potential and live their best life. And thank you for just being this amazing testimony of choosing happiness. And like you said at the beginning, letting something be shattered, but also letting it be molded new. So thank you for being such a bright light in this world and everything that you are doing. And I am going to be first in line for your book.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was an honor, and anytime. And I'm sorry I had a little coughing fit there. I should know better to bring a glass of water in. So next time. But I genuinely appreciate you having me on, Ashley. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And I will talk to you soon, goddess.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.